You'll still be there for me, right? My ex asked after dumping me. He never expected my answer would come 12 hours later. My name is Claire Bennett, and I was 30 years old when my boyfriend ended our relationship, but somehow still expected me to keep taking care of him. It happened over FaceTime on a Thursday evening. Ethan appeared on my screen beneath the harsh white light of his apartment kitchen, avoiding the camera as if he'd rehearsed the conversation but forgotten half his lines. Claire, this isn't working anymore. I think we should see other people. After nearly 2 years together, he ended our relationship with the same detached tone he used to cancel dinner plans. I didn't cry or ask whether there was someone else. Sitting on my couch with untouched takeout growing a cold beside me, I simply replied, yeah, I know. He looked surprised. You know? I knew something had changed. My calm unsettled him far more than tears would have as he hesitated before saying, I don't want you to think I never cared about you, and I'd still like us to be friends. I already knew what was coming. He leaned closer. You'll still be there for me, right? You're the only person who really understands me. I don't want to lose that. For almost 2 years, that sentence had kept me exactly where he wanted me. Whenever he missed deadlines, overspent his money, disappeared for an entire weekend, or needed someone to clean up another problem, I was always the one who supposedly understood him better than anyone else. I had mistaken that role for love when in reality it was dependence. So I gave him the answer he expected. Sure, Ethan, whatever you need. Relief spread across his face. I knew you'd understand. He smiled, said he was meeting co-workers, and ended the call as casually as if we'd settled a minor disagreement instead of ending our relationship. I stared at the dark screen for a long time. I'd always imagined losing Ethan would destroy me, but instead of heartbreak, I felt something quietly loosen inside my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was relief. The breakup hadn't surprised me. I'd watched it happen for months. Over the next few months, his calls grew shorter, his excuses grew longer, and he only replied when he needed something. 3 weeks earlier, my car battery died outside my office after dark. Ethan ignored my calls for nearly 2 hours, then finally answered from a noisy party. Sorry, I didn't see your call. You read my message. I was busy. I paid for roadside assistance while Ethan went back to his party. The next morning, he asked me to pick up his dry cleaning because it was closer to my office, and I did without thinking. Looking back, that single favor summed up our relationship. Whether it was driving him to the airport before sunrise, delivering a forgotten charger across town, or bringing him food late at night, I always rearranged my day without thinking twice. Afterward, he'd smile, wrap his arms around me and whisper, I don't know what I'd do without you. At the time, those words felt like love. Later, I realized they meant he'd grown comfortable depending on me. Ethan could be thoughtful when it suited him. He remembered my coffee order, surprised me with kind gestures now and then, and once drove across town with soup when I was sick. Those moments kept convincing me the caring version of him was real, even after he'd disappear for days or dismiss every concern with, you're reading too much into this. About a month before we broke up, everything shifted. Ethan became inseparable from a new group of co-workers. His nights filled with rooftop bars, dinners, and endless photos online, while I quietly disappeared from his plans. When I finally asked why, he barely looked up. They're work friends, Claire. You used to invite me. Because you didn't use to make everything uncomfortable. I hadn't accused him of anything. I only wanted to know why I'd been pushed to the edge of his life. The answer arrived a few days later during dinner. Ethan spent more time smiling at his phone than talking to me, and when I asked if something was wrong, he barely looked up before saying, I'm tired. Then reached for his phone again the moment it vibrated. That was when I understood the truth. I wasn't really his partner anymore. I was simply the person who made his life easier. So when he ended things over FaceTime, I wasn't surprised. The call only confirmed what his actions had been saying for months. That night, I reread nearly 2 years of messages. Every apology led to another disappointment. Every promise lasted only until he needed me again. It wasn't a love story anymore. It was a pattern. So I made myself one promise. I would stop saying yes simply because Ethan expected me to. At 10:37 that night, my phone lit up. Ethan. I'm starving. I've been craving that truffle pizza from Carbone all day. Can you bring one over? You know how I get when I don't eat. We had been broken up for less than 12 hours. Old Claire would have grabbed her keys without thinking, but this time I simply smiled. Ethan wasn't asking because he had no way to get food. He had multiple delivery apps on his phone. He was checking whether anything had actually changed. I replied that it would arrive in 30 minutes. Seconds later he answered, you're the best. I ordered his usual truffle pizza, sparkling water and tiramisu, adding one instruction before confirming the delivery. Recipient will pay directly. Do not leave the order without payment. 30 minutes later, the delivery notification appeared. 5 minutes after that, Ethan called. I let it ring. He called 3 times in a row before switching to text messages. Ethan. Claire, what the hell? Ethan, the driver says I have to pay. Ethan, you said you were bringing me pizza. I ignored every call. For the first time in nearly 2 years, Ethan had asked me for something and discovered it no longer came automatically. The calls continued for several minutes before another wave of messages arrived. Ethan, are you serious right now? Ethan, Claire, answer me. I never picked up. I wasn't trying to embarrass him or ruin his evening. I simply refused to solve another problem he'd created for himself. He wanted dinner, and dinner arrived. The only difference was that, this time, he paid for it himself. A couple of hours later, I sent one final message. Mate, so did you get your pizza? 5 minutes later, his reply appeared. Ethan, you're unbelievable. I locked my phone and slept better than I had in months. The following morning, Maya stopped by with coffee. She'd watched me spend the past year rearranging my entire life around Ethan. So after hearing about the breakup, she asked the question I expected. And then he asked you to keep taking care of him. Pretty much. When I told her about the pizza, Maya burst out laughing. So you sent exactly what he wanted and made him pay for it? He's 31, I said. Buying his own dinner seemed like a reasonable expectation. She shook her head. That might be the most polite revenge I've ever heard. It wasn't revenge, I replied. No, she said. Revenge would have been sending nothing. Her smile faded a moment later. He's going to keep calling. I know. She'd watched our relationship long enough to understand Ethan. Whenever I stopped giving in, he always found a way to make me feel guilty until apologizing seemed easier than standing my ground. Before leaving, Maya paused at the door. Hi isn't angry because of the pizza. I know. He's angry because you proved the breakup changed the rules. Her words stayed with me all day. I left my phone on silent while I ran errands, cleaned the apartment, and packed away the little reminders Ethan had left behind. For the first time in months, I cooked dinner I actually wanted, poured myself a glass of wine, and enjoyed an evening that revolved around nobody else's schedule. Around 6 o'clock, Ethan texted asking me to call him. 20 minutes later, another message accused me of being childish, followed shortly by one insisting he was trying to handle everything maturely. Ethan, I'm trying to handle this maturely. I muted the conversation and kept eating. Later that evening, Maya texted. To Maya, has His Majesty recovered from the pizza invoice? Mate, apparently we need to talk. Maya? Translation. He needs another chance to make this your fault. She was probably right. For years, Ethan had managed to turn every disagreement into a conversation about my overreacting. But something had changed. The worst thing I'd feared had already happened. He'd left, and instead of falling apart, I'd slept better than I had in months. At 9:03, he started calling again. After the 5th attempt, I finally answered. What the hell was that last night? He demanded before I could say hello. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. That pizza cost $75. You ordered truffle pizza, sparkling water, and tiramisu. I asked you to bring me food, he snapped. I didn't ask you to send a driver to my apartment and make me pay for it. I leaned back against the couch. Did you get the food? That isn't the point. It sounded like the point when you said you were starving. He let out a frustrated breath. I was standing there while the driver refused to leave until someone paid. My wallet was in my car. So you got your dinner? That's seriously all you have to say. I'm still trying to figure out what the emergency is. It was humiliating. Only then did I understand. How wasn't angry about paying for dinner. How was angry because for the first time, I hadn't come running. I thought we agreed to stay friends, he said. We did. Then why would you do this? Friends don't expect their ex to keep acting like a personal assistant. His voice hardened. So this is punishment because I was honest with you. No, you ended the relationship, Ethan. Things change after that. I never said I wanted you out of my life. You said you wanted to see other people. That doesn't mean we stop caring. I still care, I replied. I just don't think caring means letting someone make me feel used. You've changed. A week earlier, that accusation would have shaken me. Now I simply nodded. Yeah, that was the point. His tone softened almost immediately. I just thought we'd still have each other's backs. We did. Past tense? Yes. You're acting like I betrayed you. You broke up with me yesterday, Ethan. Why are you surprised that things are different? Because you're you. What's that supposed to mean? You've always been the person I could count on. That answer told me everything. Not the woman he loved, not his partner. Just the person who was always there. You've always been dependable, he continued. That's what I admired about you. Then why did you leave? Anne hesitated before answering. I needed space. To date other people? You're twisting my words. No, I'm repeating them. He sighed and tried another approach. Work's been overwhelming. I couldn't sleep last night. I barely ate. After everything we've been through, I thought maybe you could do one nice thing for me. I looked around my apartment, remembering all the countless little things I'd done over the past 2 years without ever calling attention to them. I did do something nice. You embarrassed me. I ordered exactly what you wanted. You made me pay. Yes. Why? Because we're not together anymore. He fell quiet before speaking again. You know what really bothered me? What? The delivery driver knows me. He looked at me like I couldn't even pay for my own dinner. I shook my head. That wasn't because of me. Yes, it was. No, Ethan. It happened because you assumed someone else would pay for you. For the first time since answering the phone, Ethan fell silent. Then he brushed it aside. You're making this way bigger than it is. It's not about pizza anymore. Then what is it? Boundaries. He let out a frustrated laugh. You've never talked like this. Maybe I should have. You're different, so I've been told. You're colder. No, I'm calmer. That almost makes it worse. Why? Because when people stop getting angry, it usually means they've stopped caring. His words caught me off guard because they explained everything. Ethan wasn't trying to fix our relationship. He wanted proof that he still had the power to shake my peace. I do care, I said. I just stopped confusing caring with sacrificing myself, and immediately started listing everything he'd ever done for me. I was there when your grandmother was in the hospital. I helped you move. I drove you to the airport. You did, I admitted. Those moments mattered, Ethan. The problem is that they became the exception, while taking from me became the routine. He sighed. So none of that counts? I never said that. I'm saying helping you slowly stopped being a choice. It became something you expected. You're overthinking this. I'd heard that sentence for almost 2 years. Every uncomfortable conversation ended with me being told I was too sensitive or imagining problems. This time it didn't work. I think I'm finally seeing things clearly. After a long pause, he spoke so quietly I almost missed it. I don't recognize you anymore. I looked out at the city lights beyond my apartment window. I think I finally remember who I was before I kept trying to earn your love. Neither of us spoke for a moment before I asked the question that had been sitting in my mind since the night before. When you asked me to bring you pizza, did you actually expect me to pay for it? He hesitated. I didn't even think about it. That answer hit harder than any apology could have. So, this is really it? He asked. I think so. You're really walking away. You already did. I ended the relationship, he said quietly. I didn't want to lose this. What exactly is this? Knowing we'd still be there for each other. I still care, Ethan. I just don't confuse kindness with obligation anymore. I was quiet for a long moment before saying, I need some time. So do I. I ended the call. Over the next week, Ethan disappeared completely. No calls, no messages, no late-night attempts to restart the conversation. Months earlier, that silence would have terrified me. Instead, I slept through the night, focused on work, and realized how peaceful life felt when I wasn't waiting for the next emotional crisis. A week later, Maya sent me a screenshot from Instagram. Ethan had posted a picture of an empty pizza box with the caption, "Amazing how quickly some people change once they stop pretending to care." Friends filled the comments with sympathy because they only knew his version of the story. I read it once, blocked his account, and moved on. When Maya called, she asked, "You're not going to defend yourself?" I smiled. That evening, I packed the few things Ethan had left at my apartment into a cardboard box, added a short note that simply read, "Take care, Ethan," and left it with the concierge at his building. As I turned to leave, the older man smiled. "You're Claire, right? You were always bringing him something." I smiled back. I used to. That simple observation summarized our entire relationship better than either Ethan or I ever had. Later that afternoon, Ethan called again, then followed with a long message asking if we could meet in person before throwing away 2 years together. For the first time since the breakup, he wasn't making demands. I was asking, but after reading it twice, one thing stood out. He still hadn't apologized. Not for ending things over FaceTime, not for expecting me to keep taking care of him, and not for the Instagram post. Everything in Ethan's message was still about how difficult the breakup had been for him. I showed it to Maya over dinner. "He misses you." I shook my head. "No, he misses knowing I'd always answer." She nodded. "So are you going to meet him?" After nearly 2 years together, I owed myself one honest conversation. "Not another chance," I replied. "Mate, if we talk, it won't be at either apartment." Ethan, "Okay. Meet you tomorrow, 6 o'clock. The cafe across from Riverside Park." Ethan, "I'll be there." The next evening I arrived a few minutes early, ordered a cappuccino, and was waiting by the window when Ethan walked in exactly at 6. "You look good." "Thanks." After a brief silence, he looked at me. "I've been thinking," I shouldn't have ended things over FaceTime. You deserved better. I did. He lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. It was the first real apology I'd heard. Then he added, I knew you'd understand. I almost smiled. For 2 years, I'd been expected to understand everything. His stress, his excuses, his disappearing acts, and every last-minute change of plans. Ethan, I asked quietly, what exactly are you apologizing for? For breaking up with you. Anything else? He hesitated. The pizza. What about it? I shouldn't have gotten angry. He stopped there. You know what bothered me most? I asked. The money. No, it never even occurred to you that I had the right to say no. He frowned. I wasn't trying to use you. Then answer me honestly. If I'd asked you to bring me dinner 12 hours after you broke up with me, would you have done it? He stared at the table. After a long pause, he admitted, probably not. Why? Because it would have felt strange. I nodded. But it felt completely normal when you expected me to do it. He slowly realized the contradiction. I never thought about it like that. I know. He stared into his untouched coffee. I always assumed you'd be there. I know. I looked down at his coffee. I never stopped to ask whether that was fair. I believe you. His expression shifted. You do? I don't think you woke up every morning planning to take advantage of me, but good intentions don't erase unhealthy patterns. For the first time, he didn't argue. A minute later, he said quietly, I've been miserable this week. I kept reaching for my phone to call you, and I forgot how many little things you handled. He stopped speaking and sighed. I guess that came out wrong. It came out honestly. I miss you too, he said. I hope so. He nodded, embarrassed. I think that's the first time you've ever stopped trying to make me feel better. You're right. And I probably needed it. He reached into his jacket and placed a small envelope on the table. I started thinking about all the dinners, groceries, and little things you always paid for. I know I can't repay everything, but I needed to acknowledge it. I pushed the envelope back. I don't want your money. Then what do I owe you? You owe your next relationship the ability to notice when someone keeps giving. He sat quietly before nodding. I'll remember that. We talked for another half hour about work, mutual friends, and everything except getting back together. Neither of us suggested trying again. Outside the cafe, he slipped his hands into his pockets. I guess this is goodbye. I smiled. I think it's the first honest goodbye we've had. I hope you're happy, Claire. I think I'm getting there. He smiled, turned toward the parking lot, and disappeared into the evening crowd. Halfway to my car, Maya texted. Maya? How did it go? I looked back once before replying. Amen. We both finally listened. As I drove home with the windows down, I realized I'd been wrong about endings. I used to think they arrived with tears, dramatic speeches, or one last attempt to change someone's mind. The drive home was quiet. When I reached my apartment, I noticed Ethan hadn't sent a single follow-up message. For the first time since we'd met, goodbye had simply stayed goodbye. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a rhythm I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Work became easier because I wasn't constantly checking my phone, and I started going back to the gym, not to reinvent myself after the breakup, but because I no longer rearranged my life around someone else's schedule. Maya noticed the difference first. You don't check your phone every 5 minutes anymore. I glanced toward my bag before laughing. She was right. For almost 2 years, every vibration had felt like another request, another favor, or another problem waiting for me to solve. Now entire mornings passed before I even thought about my phone. 3 weeks later, Ethan sent one final message. Ethan. I saw a woman today carrying her boyfriend's coffee while he walked ahead looking at his phone. A second message followed. Ethan. I never realized how often you were the one carrying everything. I read the words twice before replying. Amand, I'm glad you noticed. That was enough. As the summer faded into autumn, the apartment slowly became mine again. I rearranged the furniture, replaced things Ethan never liked, and finally bought the bookshelf I'd wanted for years. One weekend, while organizing my laptop, I found hundreds of photos from our relationship. Instead of deleting them, I created a folder called Past and closed my laptop. Months later, Maya and I met again at the cafe across from Riverside Park. You know, she said with a smile, it's funny that everything started with a pizza. I smiled into my coffee. It didn't. What do you mean? The pizza was just the first time I said no. She nodded quietly, and neither of us felt the need to add anything else. That evening, I returned home just before sunset and stepped onto my balcony. The city stretched beneath the fading light, alive with traffic and glowing windows. Months earlier, I would have stood there wondering whether Ethan would call or whether there was still something left to fix. My phone rested quietly inside. I hadn't forgotten Ethan. I had simply stopped building my life around him. A cool breeze crossed the balcony as light slowly appeared across the skyline, one building after another. I watched them for a while before turning back inside. I closed the balcony door behind me as the city continued shining exactly as it always had. The only difference was that, this time, I was finally home.